So we're looking at the development of City 1 today, and I want to basically place the city down because I want to understand where the industry element of the city is going to be located. Don't really have a control over that. And then I want to position a steelworks and my industry area for the city. So that's going to come stage 2. Stage 1, I need to build out and develop the main passenger station with a little more infrastructure, more tracks, so I can understand how I'm going to limit the town from obstructing on the railway and vice versa. So basically what the strategy I'm going to do is I'm going to definitely have a regional passenger line that runs in this direction along the river, and we're going to have some additional small towns in these sort of locations, but I'm also going to have a second line the other side of the river, maybe cross here. We'll have a town here, so the town will probably be the split, one line going that direction, one line crossing the river and staying on that side of the river. So that's going to be 2 sets of double tracks, so 4 tracks on this side. I think this valley is big enough that I'm going to have a sort of some kind of very, very local small train, maybe serving some smaller villages. So let's say another double track. So that gives us 6 platforms on this side. I'd also like a regional train to take the slower route through this valley. We'll probably have a smaller town here. We'll definitely have a town around City 4 in this location. So that will be 2 tracks on that side, and maybe a very, very local train just serving the small areas here. So that brings us to 6 additional platforms on this side, 4 on that side. I can't remember what the limit is on the train stations, so we will have a look and see what we can develop. First I need to understand the sizes I need for the trains. So for the regional trains I'm going to run something, not the TGVs, but the Bombardier Talent 2, the TER or TER trains that run in France. They're only 56 meters, so we'll probably run, I would say, up to a maximum, say 168, if we're going to run 3 in a row of those. And for the very local trains, we'll probably just run a single one of those, so 56. So if I say 200 meters maximum, that should definitely accommodate us. I might just go for 150 because I don't want it to be too long. That's quite a lot of people. Let's say 150. We'll go for 150, and then we can work around that. We can always extend it if we find that when we're actually operating that we have not enough capacity. So we actually reached our limit. We could only add another 2 tracks, but no platform on the end on this side. So these are going to be the 2 regional lines, 2 tracks for each. They're going to go off either side of the river. The regional line that runs through the valley, and then I'm just going to have 2 platforms for the local line, and we'll call it done. We will add a bigger terminal building for this station, something that reflects the size of the station a little better. And we'll call that done for now, and we'll start to build these tracks out and head down to the river with the regional side. But first we're going to build a depot for these regional trains as part of this depot complex and connect these up. So we've got our crossovers at the end of the platforms, and then opportunities to switch both sides of the track there our signals, the first signals coming in to the station, will be at this location. So we've got then give trains the option to pick one of the 4 platforms regardless of which route they're on. Then we've got our connection to the depot. It only comes into these 2 tracks because, as you've just seen, we have the option to switch over to the other side, and then we've got a connection from these 2 to the 6 depot tracks. Hopefully that will be enough. We'll come back and detail the catenary masts which are missing. We have a mod that we can do that with, and then we'll carry on taking this track down to the river. But first off, we'll have a 4-track station for the town that's going to be at the bottom here, and we'll orientate the station sort of roughly in this direction because both lines are heading off to the top of the screen there and coming from roughly the sort of bottom right of the screen. As much as possible, I'll try to connect tracks up to existing routes, because in reality you wouldn't have tracks sort of 50 meters apart where you could help it. You'd use the same cutting and engineering and bridges, etc., as much as possible that you could use, even though this track is going to peel off sort of fairly soon. It gives it a little more flavour of reality than just lines going everywhere at all sort of different angles. You are trying to give the impression that this route is built. It will split off, but it would feel a bit weird if it was just like going down this hill this far away from this existing railway. So that's what we're trying to achieve here. So I've built the track and I'm peeling off the standard lines to connect to our new station and our new town. And whilst I was here, I also changed this tunnel into a cut-in, because like I said, nothing is ever finished and you'll keep coming back and tweaking things and amending just so you can try and get it looking as good as possible. So I'll start looking at the other regional line that goes into the valley, which comes off from this side of the station. And again, an additional depot for trains which will be served by this half of the station over here. Again, crossovers at the end of the platforms, an ability to cross over to the opposite tracks. This is purely to get in and out of the depot, and then the depot switches themselves. So we're going to take this regional track on a route that is a bit more scenic, shall we say, up towards this part of the valley. So this will definitely be an interesting challenge to get over these hills. We'll see what we can do now. So I'm wondering, now that I've got a bit of height to get up to this ridge, whether I'm going to be able to come back around this ridge and then join the track over here. Basically the answer is no. It's way too steep for a regional train. I think we'll restrict this kind of manoeuvring to maybe the coal or the logging trains. So I'm going to undo this and I'm probably just going to do a tunnel that connects back through this way. Yeah, it's going to have to be even further back because the height disparity is immense at this point. Could try and kind of climb down along the hills. Let's give that a go. Gonna have to tidy up these bits of landscape afterwards, but it should look okay. So we'll come back to that. We'll refine that valley route as we get near the time, and I'm gonna run a very local regional route around this end of the valley, and then we will set up City 1 as our actual city. Between that, we need to basically reserve areas that we don't want to have the town impinging on. I'll get to that in a second. So we're going to establish where we want the small, very local stations. The first one we're going to do is a 4-tracker, and we'll position it around here, and this will give the opportunity to swap between the local train and the regional trains. And then we'll position another village, I would say around here, one in this location, we'll have one around this location, and one in this location. And then what we might we'll have another one here, and we will connect back to the loop roughly over here. Luckily, because these tracks are already dipping into the ground, we can achieve a crossover with a bridge without having to actually raise the tracks above the sort of nominal ground level. But to cross over these TGV lines, obviously we will need to raise the track up and build a bridge. Typically it's 3 hits on the raise track button to get a track above a track. Just bear in mind it does take quite a while to get up to that height, especially with realistic track heights turned on the mod. So here the track comes back, loops back to this station. I'm not going to do any sort of fancy crossovers to avoid the local and the regional trains crossing. It can just cross over the tracks, and hopefully we can solve this with timetabling, because we're so near the end of the line. Trains are not going to go very quickly. They're almost done. There's no need to keep that grade separation, I don't think, at this point, but we'll see what happens when it runs. So we have the basic local track layout for this city. The next thing we need to do is start detailing and making sure that the areas we don't want the city to impinge on, we set out now, and also we were going to set out where we want our tram or bus stations to be. The reason why I'm going to build a city at this point is I kind of want to see where the industrial area gets built, and that's then going to dictate where I do the remaining bits of work in the city in regards to the industrial areas, cargo, possibly steelworks I'll build in this town as well. So we'll start looking at this area. So we've added a few more tracks. Most of these won't do anything, but we might put some static assets down to give this impression of a busier yard. We'll have trains sort of stabling in this area. We'll get some loose carriages and some loose trains, sort of just for the look around this area. So taking the grass textures off, has something a bit more industrial in the depot area. So I spent a bit of time with various assets that I've downloaded from the Steam Workshop, various bits of trackside equipment and all sorts of usual things that you would see along the railway. So we've got bits of substation, bits of spare track and rails for future construction, lots of electrical cabinets. We've done some signalling with some masts so that we've got tracks controlled, little bits of sheds and depots, more substations because there's lots of electricity, some tanks, a few more sheds, a few more substations, train depots which look like little locomotive washing stations, and we've taken this all the way through, coils of wire, all the sort of stuff which is left around depots and railway areas, trying to give this area a bit of life and a bit of interest, really bringing this to life. So I think this will do for now, but really you just go to town and do what you want and see what you think works. If it looks realistic or not, I'm sort of believing that this is a railway depot that is in use. It's various bits of things which are being forgotten and left, which seems to be the way of the railways as you're looking out the window. I'm sure it's all the purpose for it, little workshops, little offices, and this will do for now. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to basically surround everything that we don't want the city to build onto with fences. And just to know, any roads that you don't want the city to attach buildings to, you need to make sure that when you build them you have player ownership on as yes. Otherwise someone will build a house in the middle of your train depot, and you don't necessarily want that to happen. So using the fences mod in the assets, we are basically going to draw a series of fences in a line around all the areas that we don't want the city to intrude in. The city won't go across these fences because it's a collision asset and it doesn't know how to get across it. So once I've done this, we'll come back and I'm also going to add some trees and vegetation around these areas as well. So what you're doing with this is you're defining where you want the town to eventually build up to. We probably don't want houses right up against this point of the track, but that's what will happen if you don't force it back to the area that you want it to. It's quite important on embankments, because the towns will expand and they will push out buildings on little sort of raised structures that give you a really tight retaining structure next to the rails. So if you put a fence at the top of the embankment, you can fill this with trees and vegetation, and you can keep the town at the top of the bank. So we stitched fences around the immediate area of the town, and next we'll get into the vegetation. So this is really starting to come to life now, and we've got our trees in, depot and the tracks looking really good. I think this is going to be an interesting place to hang out once we've got some trains running. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to have a look at the station and a few things that we need to have in the city centre. The first thing I'm going to do is hit save, because before you want to do anything regards building cities, it can be quite crashy, so we'll do that first. So one of the things I want to do, I actually want to have an older station building. They're not available because the date is set to 2024, because we've been trying to build modern trains and TGVs. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to change this date to something like 1870. That's going to tell me I've got new vehicles available. Not really interested in the horse-drawn carriages on this game. So we'll configure the station. We will delete this station building. Luckily nothing gets deleted when you change periods. So I'm going to go for the large main building, and I think we'll try and see if we can get a couple of these in alongside each other. Perfect. So this is much more the authentic station that I was looking for. So this would be as if the station's been here a long time, and maybe lots of things have developed over the years, and we haven't just jumped in to 2024 and created it from scratch in a sandbox. But we'll jump back to 2024, and we will next look at the roads. And I'm going to keep player ownership on the roads, because I don't necessarily want city buildings to be constructed in this area, so you have to be quite careful where we position them. So I'm going to make a large street, keep player ownership, and we're going to have electric tram tracks. So yeah, we're too close to the station there, so that looks good. So you want to see your joins. That's as far as we'll take this road. I don't want to obviously create roads that have player ownership, because then nothing will get built off to the sides. And then we want to build some passenger terminals, and I'm just going to use the basic ones initially. And I think we're going to build quite a big city here, so I want quite an extensive tram station directly opposite the main train station, and that's effectively going to take up most of this little bit of road. So you can kind of see why I created that as player ownership only. This is the kind of thing you'd expect directly opposite a main train station. Then with the paint tool, I think we're in the sort of grey asphalt. We'll take out these little bits of grass where we can. And also, generally, if we're going to keep grass areas, we can remove the super long grass that is the default. So it's a little neater, gets rid of the bushiness. So don't know how much this is going to get retained. We can come back once the city is built just tidied that up. Now the other thing that I definitely want to have in this city, so I'm going to go back to roads. We will keep the same road type, player ownership to no, and we want the tram track. And I'm going to make this road a little curvy. So we're going to start, this road is going to curve off in this direction. And we will have a side street. So I'm happy for things to be built along here. Let's just touch up with the asphalt again. Then I'm going to place a cathedral. I really want to have a cathedral in my big city here. So I downloaded a mod. So we're going to see what that looks like. And if I'm not able to find it, it's not called cathedral. Church. Got church assets. We might have to work our way through. Can't logically remember where it would have been placed. None of these. I think it was in tracks. No. I'll come back, I'll find it. I found it. So I'm going to do a ridiculously huge church, cathedral in the centre of my town. Something nice and colourful. And I'm going to position it roughly like that. Then I'm going to use the same roads that we were using, and I'm going to create a sort of cathedral square directly around the cathedral, and just going to do that again. I'm going to use fences again to prevent anything building into the churchyard. So we'll have a different sort of fence. We'll have something a little bit more appropriate for a city centre if we have anything. Let's give this a go. This is so tiny, we might not even see it. We're just going to tuck it in close to the street because I don't want anything else building in this zone. The reason I haven't used player ownership roads is I do want things to build on this side of the road. Oh, look at that. Gone into the pavement a little bit, but that's fine. It just means that when they built the road they were very, very inconsiderate about ancient heritage. This does happen. Okay, and we're going to give this, I think we've got some paving, some nice tiles. This might have to do. We'll pave this whole area. Might look a bit bleak, but they kind of tend to look a bit exposed as the city is built around them. We'd have had buildings right up against them, obviously. That would be the starting point for the city. So you save it again because, as we said, when you're actually constructing the cities, they can be very buggy. So using the mod, the Advanced Town Builder, I've first set the date to 1920 because I didn't want the city to be completely modern from the start. I've set the values to 2000 for all residential, commercial, industrial, and we have the city of Limo, which will become City 1, is now Limo, and what we have is the commercial area over to the right here, some residential buildings sort of in this area, and the industrial zone towards the left. So this industrial zone is where I will create the cargo station and the steelworks that I'm going to build in this area. So that will be the next step. Just putting some of the trees back in because the town generation wiped out some of my trees. Just got to be careful not to intrude onto the tracks too much. So we can detail this back up. So I mean, it's not city skylines, you don't have a lot of options with what you can create, but this is about as good as we can get it, I think. We can keep trying and keep deleting and keep redoing it, but ultimately we're going to end up with something quite similar in the end. So we'll work with this, and this will be Limo City 1.